Ladies and gentlemen, there is a woman rising in this hour who does not wait for permission, validation, or protection from anyone else. She has walked through abandonment, disappointment, betrayal, and silence, and instead of breaking, she awakened. This is not the woman who is lonely. This is the woman who is liberated. She has learned what it means to sit alone and still feel whole. She has discovered that solitude can sharpen discernment. When no one is whispering directions in her ear, she can finally hear her own spirit speak clearly. And when a woman learns to hear herself, she becomes extremely dangerous to systems that thrive on her insecurity. She is dangerous because she is no longer desperate. Desperation makes people manipulable, but this woman has nothing she needs to chase. She does not beg for attention. She does not shrink to be chosen. She does not negotiate her worth just to feel wanted. She knows that being alone is not the same as being empty. This woman has endured nights where tears were her only companion. She has sat in rooms full of people and still felt unseen. And instead of hardening her heart, she refined her soul. She took the pain and turned it into wisdom. She took rejection and turned it into revelation. She took silence and turned it into strategy. A woman with no man is dangerous because she has mastered self-control. She is no longer reactive. She no longer explains herself to those who misunderstand her. She moves with intention. She speaks with weight. Her presence alone unsettles insecure minds because she cannot be easily rushed, or ruled. She has boundaries now, and boundaries scare people who benefited from her lack of them. She knows when to walk away. She knows when to be quiet. She knows when to stand her ground. She is no longer afraid of loss because she has already survived the worst kind, losing herself, and found her way back. This woman does not compete. She does not compare. She does not perform. She is not loud, yet she is not invisible. Her power is internal, and that is why it lasts. She has learned that peace is more valuable than passion without purpose, and alignment is more important than attachment. She is dangerous because if she chooses a man now, it will not be out of fear, it will be out of alignment. She does not need rescue. She requires partnership. She does not seek completion, she seeks compatibility. And not everyone qualifies to walk beside a woman who has already conquered herself. This is not a statement of loss, it is a declaration of return. It means she has come back to herself after years of handing pieces of her power to expectations, relationships, approvals, and roles that demanded more from her than they ever poured back in. When she stopped outsourcing her strength, she did not become cold or closed. She became rooted. She became intentional. She became whole in a way that no external presence could ever manufacture for her. For a long time, she was taught subtly and sometimes loudly that strength was something she borrowed from a partner's reassurance, borrowed from being chosen, borrowed from being wanted, protected, or validated. She learned to measure her value by how well she was held rather than how deeply she could stand. And without realizing it, she began to give away the authority over her own life, believing that love required surrendering parts of herself that should have remained sacred. But something happened. Maybe it was disappointment. Maybe it was abandonment. Maybe it was a moment when she realized she was carrying emotional weight for two people while standing on empty herself. Whatever the catalyst, it woke her up. She saw that relying on someone else to define her stability was exhausting her spirit. She recognized that strength loaned out can always be withdrawn, but strength cultivated within cannot be repossessed. She stopped waiting for someone else to calm her storms. She learned how to sit with her own emotions without panicking. She allowed herself to feel deeply without needing someone to rescue her from discomfort. She discovered that resilience is not loud. It is patient. It does not rush healing. It does not perform recovery. It quietly rebuilds the foundation from the inside out. When a woman stops outsourcing her strength, she starts taking responsibility for her inner world. She no longer expects someone else to regulate her emotions, heal her wounds, or validate her decisions. This does not mean she rejects support. It means she no longer depends on it for survival. She can appreciate companionship without clinging to it. She can receive love without losing herself inside it. This shift changes everything. Her decisions become clearer because they are no longer filtered through fear of being alone. Her standards rise not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. She begins to choose from alignment instead of anxiety. She no longer tolerates what drains her just to avoid silence. She understands that loneliness inside a relationship is far more damaging than solitude in peace. A woman who has reclaimed her strength moves differently. She is not reactive, she is reflective. She listens before she responds. She pauses before she commits. She has learned the power of restraint, not as suppression, but as wisdom. She no longer feels the need to prove her worth through over-giving, over-explaining, overstaying. She knows when to leave because she knows when she is no longer being honored. Her strength now comes from self-trust. She believes herself. She trusts her instincts because she has seen how often they tried to warn her before. She no longer ignores her intuition to keep the peace or preserve a connection. Peace without authenticity is not peace at all. It is quiet suffering. She is done suffering silently. This woman is not hardened by her independence. She is softened by clarity. She is compassionate without being consumable. She is kind without being careless. She understands that love is not measured by endurance alone. Staying through everything is not noble when it costs you your identity. True strength knows when to fight and when to walk away. When she stopped outsourcing her strength, she also stopped asking for permission to become who she was always meant to be. She stopped shrinking her ambitions to fit someone else's comfort. She stopped dimming her insight to avoid intimidation. She stopped apologizing for her depth, care enough, or her discipline, her discernment. She realized that her power was never too much. It was just inconvenient for those who benefited from her self-doubt. There's a quiet confidence that emerges in this woman. She no longer announces her boundaries, she lives them. She no longer threatens to leave. She leaves when necessary. She no longer chases clarity from people who thrive on confusion. She understands that consistency is a language. She listens carefully to what people's actions are saying. This kind of strength makes her extremely selective. Not because she thinks she is superior, because she has worked too hard to rebuild herself to gamble her peace away. She knows the cost of emotional chaos. She knows the toll of carrying unresolved trauma into new connections. So she moves slowly. She observes. She allows time to reveal character. She is no longer impressed by intensity. She is drawn to stability. A woman who has stopped outsourcing her strength does not fear being alone because she has learned how to be with herself. She has discovered that solitude is not a punishment. It is a classroom. In that quiet space, she met her true needs. She learned her limits. She faced her shadows. And instead of running from them, she integrated them. This made her grounded, not guarded. If love comes now, it must meet her at her level of self-awareness. It must respect her autonomy, honor her voice, and support her growth. She will not abandon herself again for companionship. She will not negotiate her values for temporary comfort. She has learned that love should add to her life, not replace her foundation. This woman is not anti-love. She is anti-dependence. She is not closed off. She is anchored. She understands that the strongest relationships are formed between two whole individuals, not one whole and one searching for completion. She knows that unity without individuality becomes suffocation. A woman with no man has not lost anything essential. She has reclaimed something priceless. She has taken her strength back home, and now, whether she walks alone or eventually walks beside someone worthy, she walks with authority, peace, unshakable self-respect. In a world that constantly demands noise, presence, performance, and explanation, solitude feels almost rebellious, often misunderstood as loneliness, mistaken for absence, or viewed as something to escape. But true solitude is not a void. It is a refining space. It is where the unnecessary falls away and the essential becomes clear. When a person chooses solitude intentionally, they are not withdrawing from life. They are stepping into a deeper understanding of it and of themselves. Discernment cannot grow in chaos. When voices are constantly speaking into your decisions, clarity becomes diluted, opinions blur intuition, expectations muffle truth. Solitude removes the interference. It turns the volume down on the outside world so the inner voice can finally be heard. In that stillness, discernment is sharpened not by instruction, But by awareness, you begin to notice patterns you once ignored. You recognize emotional triggers instead of reacting to them. You see people, situations, opportunities as they truly are, not as you hoped they would be. Self-awareness is born in moments when there is no audience, when no one is watching, validating or judging. You meet yourself without performance. Solitude forces honesty. You can no longer blame distraction for your unrest or people for your lack of direction. In the quiet, your habits speak, your fears surface. Your desires clarify. This confrontation is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. You cannot understand yourself while constantly escaping yourself. In solitude, you begin to differentiate between what you truly want and what you were conditioned to pursue. Many people live entire lives chasing goals were never theirs, carrying beliefs they never chose, and fulfilling roles they never questioned. Solitude disrupts that cycle. It creates space to ask difficult questions. Why do I feel drained? Why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Why do certain things trigger me so deeply? These questions are not meant to condemn. They are meant to reveal. Discernment grows when you stop needing immediate answers. Solitude teaches patience with uncertainty. Instead of rushing decisions to avoid discomfort, you learn to sit with the unknown until clarity emerges. This slows you down, but it also strengthens you. You stop making choices based on fear, urgency, or emotional pressure. You begin to trust timing. You begin to trust yourself. One of the most powerful effects of solitude is that it exposes misalignment. You are constantly surrounded by people, obligations, and noise. It is easy to ignore the quiet tension between who you are and how you are living. Solitude removes the mask. It highlights where you are compromising your values, betraying your needs, or silencing your intuition. This awareness can be painful. It is also liberating. You cannot correct what you refuse to acknowledge. As self-awareness deepens, responsibility follows. Solitude strips away excuses. You begin to see where your choices, not just your circumstances, have shaped your reality. This realization is not meant to burden you with guilt. It is meant to empower you with agency. When you understand your role, you regain your power. You stop waiting for external change and begin making internal shifts that transform everything. Solitude also sharpens discernment in relationships. Away from emotional attachment and constant interaction, you gain perspective. You can evaluate connections without the pressure of presence. You begin to see who respects your boundaries, who drains your energy, and who truly supports your growth. Distance clarifies intention. Silence reveals consistency. You learn that not everyone who desires access to you deserves intimacy with you. In solitude, you become aware of your emotional patterns. You recognize whether you avoid conflict, over-explain, people please, or shut down. You see how you respond to rejection, criticism, or abandonment. This awareness allows you to heal rather than repeat. You stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from understanding. Discernment becomes less about judging others and more about understanding yourself. There is also a spiritual dimension to solitude. When distractions fall away, deeper questions emerge, questions of purpose, meaning, and direction. You begin to sense when something is aligned and when it is not, even if it looks good on the surface. Discernment is not always logical. Sometimes it is felt. Solitude refines this sensitivity. You learn to trust subtle unease as much as obvious warning signs. You learn that peace is often a better indicator than excitement. Self-awareness cultivated in solitude brings emotional maturity. You stop projecting unresolved pain onto others. You take ownership of your healing. You recognize that your triggers are invitations to grow, evidence that others are always wrong. This maturity creates stability. You become less reactive and more intentional. You choose your words carefully. You conserve your energy. You stop engaging in battles that do not align with your values. Solitude also builds confidence. Not the loud kind that seeks affirmation, but the quiet kind that knows itself. When you have spent time alone and survived your own thoughts, you stop fearing external opinions. You know who you are, what you stand for, and what you will no longer tolerate. This confidence is grounded, not performative. It does not need constant reinforcement because it is rooted in self-knowledge. Over time, solitude teaches you that being alone is not a weakness. It is a skill. It requires courage to sit with yourself, to reflect honestly, and to grow without applause. But those who master solitude gain something rare: clarity. They move through life with discernment that protects them from unnecessary pain and self-awareness that guides them toward alignment. Solitude does not isolate you from others. It prepares you for healthier connection. When you know yourself, you do not lose yourself in relationships. When you discern clearly, you do not ignore red flags. When you are self-aware, you communicate honestly and listen deeply. Solitude sharpens you so that when you return to the world, you do so with wisdom, intention, and peace. In the end, solitude is not about withdrawal, it is about refinement. It is the quiet workshop where discernment is sharpened and self-awareness is forged. And once these qualities are developed, they become lifelong companions, guiding every decision, relationship, and direction you choose. Desperation is one of the most underestimated forces shaping human behavior. It does not announce itself loudly. It disguises itself as longing, urgency, attachment, or fear of loss. When a woman is desperate, whether for love, approval, security, or validation, she can be guided, pressured, persuaded into choices that do not honor her truth. Not because she is weak, but because fear distorts clarity. The moment desperation leaves her, something profound happens. Her power returns. When she was desperate, she accepted crumbs and called them compromise. She ignored discomfort and named it patience. She silenced her intuition because she feared what listening to it might cost her. Desperation made her tolerate inconsistency, excuse disrespect, and overextend herself emotionally just to keep connections alive. It trained her to chase reassurance instead of stability, attention instead of alignment. And in that state, manipulation did not need force. It only needed time, and manipulation thrives where desperation lives. It feeds on unmet needs and unresolved wounds. When someone knows you are afraid to be alone, they can threaten distance. When someone knows you crave validation, they can withhold it. Someone knows you fear abandonment, they can control you with uncertainty. Desperation creates leverage. Anyone who understands that can use it, sometimes subtly, sometimes deliberately, not overnight, not easily, and not without pain. The shift began when she finally got tired of betraying herself to keep others comfortable. It began when she noticed how exhausted she felt after constantly explaining, proving, adjusting, and waiting. She realized that desperation was not love, it was survival mode, and survival mode is not meant to be permanent. She chose to sit with the discomfort she once avoided. Instead of filling silence with people, she filled it with reflection. Instead of chasing connection, she examined her patterns. She asked herself hard questions about why she tolerated what hurt her and why she feared letting go of what no longer served her. In that honest confrontation, desperation started to loosen its grip. She began to recognize manipulation not because others changed, but because she did. Nervous system calmed. Her reaction slowed. She stopped responding to pressure with panic. She stopped mistaking urgency for importance. When someone tried to rush her, guilt her, or confuse her, she no longer felt the need to comply, just to keep peace. She learned that peace built on self. Betrayal is not peace at all. A woman who is no longer desperate does not need to be convinced of her worth. She no longer looks outside herself for permission to feel secure. This makes manipulation effective because manipulation relies on insecurity. It relies on dangling rewards, threatening loss, or creating emotional chaos. But when she is anchored within herself, those tactics fail. She is not easily baited. She is not easily shaken. She is not easily swayed. Her standards rise naturally, not out of ego, but out of self-respect. She no longer negotiates the basics: honesty, consistency, effort, and respect. She does not argue for clarity. She observes behavior. She does not chase closure. She accepts truth when it reveals itself. She understands that manipulation often hides behind charm, intensity, and promises. Discernment allows her to see patterns instead of words. This is the key difference. Desperation traps people in situations they know are wrong because leaving feels more painful than staying. She has learned that temporary discomfort is far less damaging than prolonged self-abandonment. She trusts herself to survive endings. She knows she will not disappear without someone else holding her together. This confidence is quiet, but it is unshakable. When she speaks now, her words are measured. She no longer over-explains to be understood. She no longer defends her boundaries to those who repeatedly cross them. She understands that manipulation often provokes emotional reactions to regain control, but she does not give access to that leverage. Her calm is not weakness, it is strength under control. Emotionally, she has matured. She recognizes when someone is projecting, gaslighting, deflecting responsibility. She does not internalize blame that does not belong to her. She listens, but she also observes. She feels, but she also reflects. This balance protects her. Manipulation loses power when awareness enters the room. She has also made peace with being misunderstood. This is another freedom desperation never allows. When she was desperate, she needed to be seen a certain way. She needed approval to feel safe. Now, she knows who she is. Misinterpretation no longer threatens her identity. She does not correct every false assumption. She lets actions speak, and she lets silence do its work. A woman who is no longer desperate does not need constant reassurance. She does not panic at distance. She does not cling to potential while ignoring reality. She evaluates consistency over time. This patience disarms manipulation, which relies on emotional spikes and instability. Where there is steadiness, there is no grip. This does not make her cold or closed off. It makes her intentional. She still loves deeply, but she does not love blindly. She still hopes, but she does not ignore evidence. She still believes in connection, but she does not sacrifice herself to maintain it. Her openness is protected by wisdom, not fear. The most dangerous thing about a woman who is no longer desperate is that she cannot be controlled by withholding. You cannot starve her of affection to gain compliance. You cannot confuse her to gain power. You cannot threaten her with loss when she knows she will be okay without you. Her sense of security comes from within, and that makes her sovereign. She understands now that desperation once made her accessible to harm, not because she deserved it, but because she had not yet learned her own value. That lesson has been learned, and once learned, it cannot be undone. She is no longer desperate. And because of that, she is no longer manipulable. She moves with clarity, chooses with intention, and stands with self-respect. Anyone who enters her life now must meet her in truth, not control her through fear. And that changes everything. Pain is one of the most honest teachers in life. It arrives unannounced, often unwelcome, leaves its mark in ways that can feel unbearable. For a long time, she may have seen pain as an enemy, a setback, or a punishment. It can shake her to her core, rattle her sense of identity, and challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and the world. There is a threshold, a turning point, where pain stops being just suffering and begins to become a force that educates, strengthens, and shapes character. She has arrived at that threshold. She has sat in the fire of disappointment, heartbreak, betrayal, and failure, and instead of allowing it to destroy her, she chose to let it teach her. Pain, when faced with honesty and courage, is not a weight, it is a lens. Through it, she sees reality with clarity, strips away illusions, and gains a sharper understanding of who she is, what she values, and how she must operate in the world. Every wound she has endured has become a teacher. Rejection taught her self-respect. Abandonment revealed the depth of her resilience. Mistakes exposed blind spots that demanded awareness. Misunderstandings illuminated the boundaries she had neglected. Loss, in its bitterest form, became a mirror reflecting the parts of herself that she had overlooked, ignored, or compromised. She learned that pain is rarely random. It is deliberate in its design to awaken insight, reveal truth, and guide transformation. Transforming pain into wisdom begins with reflection. She does not merely endure, she evaluates. She examines how she responded, where she overextended, what lessons were hidden in the hurt. She asks herself the difficult question she once avoided. Why did this happen? What part of this is a pattern? How did I contribute to the situation, and what can I change? This reflective process is not about blame or shame. It is about clarity. It allows her to extract knowledge from suffering, converting moments of weakness into pillars of understanding. Wisdom gained from pain is not theoretical, it is practical. It informs her decisions, her relationships, and her approach to life. She no longer enters situations blindly, driven by hope alone. She discerns motives more clearly, reads character more accurately, and navigates conflict with strategic grace. Pain has taught her patience, not as a passive waiting, but as an active engagement with timing, understanding, and perception. She knows when to act, when to pause, and when to let situations unfold so that the truth is revealed without distortion. Emotional maturity is the companion of this wisdom. She has learned that feelings, while important, are not always the ultimate authority. She can feel deeply without being enslaved to her emotions. She has learned to recognize when anger is masking fear, when hurt is concealing pride, or when sadness is disguised impatience. This discernment allows her to respond rather than react, to act with intentionality instead of impulsivity. Emotional maturity does not erase pain, transforms her relationship with it, giving her agency over how she is shaped by experience rather than allowing experience to dictate her worth. Through pain, she has also cultivated resilience. She has discovered the power of endurance, not merely surviving, but thriving in the aftermath of trials. She has been knocked down, but she has learned to rise with insight rather than resentment. Each challenge has strengthened her resolve and deepened her understanding that her capacity to withstand hardship is greater than she previously imagined. Pain has revealed the contours of her strength, showing her where she is unshakable and where she still requires growth. She has learned to forgive, not for the sake of others, but for the sake of her own peace. Emotional maturity is incomplete without the ability to release bitterness, to untangle herself from the chains of past hurts. Pain once tempted her toward anger, blame, and resentment. Now, it teaches discernment and justice, allowing her to address wrongs without being consumed by them. She understands that forgiveness is not weakness. It is an acknowledgement that her growth is more important than her grievance. Her relationships have been transformed as a result. Pain has sharpened her perception of others' intentions. She no longer invests in those who consistently harm or disregard her well-being. She approaches intimacy with wisdom, knowing that trust must be earned and boundaries must be respected. Emotional maturity has equipped her with the ability to communicate clearly, assert herself confidently, and hold space for her own needs without diminishing the needs of others. She does not react to manipulation. She observes it and responds strategically. She does not cling to attachment. She seeks connection with alignment. Pain has also refined her priorities. She now values substance over superficiality, quality over quantity, and depth over convenience. She recognizes that life is fleeting and that energy is precious. Emotional maturity has allowed her to invest wisely into herself, into her growth, and into relationships that uplift rather than deplete. She no longer chases validation externally because she has learned that the greatest authority over her worth resides within. Her perspective on success and failure has shifted as well. Pain has taught her that setbacks are not evidence of inadequacy, but opportunities for recalibration. Emotional maturity has shown her that disappointment is temporary, but the lessons it carries are enduring. She approaches challenges with strategic patience, knowing that outcomes are shaped not solely by circumstance, but by preparation, reflection, and deliberate action informed by the wisdom pain has cultivated. Through this process, she has developed a deep sense of self-awareness. Pain exposes patterns that were hidden under comfort and distraction. She has learned to recognize when she is repeating old behaviors, when she is compromising herself unnecessarily, and when she is neglecting her boundaries. Emotional maturity allows her to correct these patterns proactively rather than reacting destructively after consequences arise. She moves through life with intentionality, guided by insight rather than impulse. Ultimately, the transformation of pain into wisdom and emotional maturity is a form of empowerment. She is no longer a passive participant in her experiences. She does not allow suffering to dictate her trajectory. Instead, she uses it as a compass to navigate life with intelligence, discernment, and strength. Each scar tells a story not of defeat, but of evolution. Each tear has nourished understanding. Each disappointment has contributed to resilience. Her life, once fragmented by hurt, is now integrated by insight. Pain has been alchemized into a powerful tool, shaping her into a woman who cannot be easily swayed. shaken or silenced. Her wisdom allows her to see beyond immediate gratification, superficial appearances, and empty promises. Her emotional maturity allows her to engage with the world authentically, honestly, and courageously. She understands that pain is not the end. It is the beginning of depth, character, and discernment. What once could have broken her now makes her formidable. What once could have left her vulnerable now leaves her secure. She moves with quiet authority because she knows her journey. She trusts her strength. She honors the lessons that only suffering could teach. Pain has been transformed into wisdom and emotional maturity, and through this transformation, she has become not only unshakable, but unstoppable. She walks forward with clarity, resilience, the profound knowledge that her past no longer confines her. It propels her. There is a profound strength that comes from mastering oneself, power that is quiet yet unmistakable. It is not the strength that announces itself in volume, force, or aggression. It is the strength that chooses patience over impulse, clarity over chaos, and action over reaction. Self-control is not merely a discipline of restraint. It is a cultivation of sovereignty over one's mind, emotions, and responses. For a woman who has learned this, her life becomes a testimony of deliberate, purposeful living. Calmness is the first gift of self-control. In a world that thrives on urgency, drama, and emotional escalation, the ability to remain composed is revolutionary. She does not allow external pressures to dictate her emotional state. When others provoke, manipulate, or attempt to destabilize her, she does not respond reflexively. She breathes, she observes, she chooses her response instead of reacting from instinct or fear. This calm is not passive. It is deliberate, rooted in awareness and the understanding that peace is more powerful than hysteria. Her calmness is visible in the way she carries herself. It is present in her voice, her posture, her words, and the spaces she occupies. It does not waver in the face of conflict or uncertainty. Others may rush panic or lash out, but she moves with a steadiness that is almost magnetic. People are drawn to her because calmness is contagious. It reassures, it stabilizes, and it inspires confidence. She has learned that composure is a form of influence, and those who possess it are seldom controlled by the chaos around them. Intentionality flows naturally from self-control. She does not live at the mercy of impulses, whims, or fleeting emotions. Every choice is measured, considered, aligned with her values, goals, and purpose. She plans before she acts. She pauses before she speaks. She reflects before she commits. This intentionality allows her to navigate life with clarity and precision. Decisions that once felt rushed or reactive are now deliberate and strategic. She understands that life rewards foresight and punishes impulsivity. Her intentionality is most evident in her relationships. She does not chase, plead, manipulate to gain approval. She does not compromise her standards to appease others. She chooses connections that enhance her growth, align with her values, respect her boundaries. She understands that intentional relationships require patience, discernment, and reciprocity. She does not enter or maintain bonds out of fear, desperation, or obligation. Every interaction is purposeful, not performative. Power is the culmination of her self-control. It is the natural outcome of calmness and intentionality combined. She is powerful not because she dominates others, because she cannot be dominated herself. Power is not measured in noise or aggression. It is measured in influence, resilience, and presence. Her power lies in her ability to remain centered while others sway. It lies in her ability to act with precision when opportunities arise. It lies in the quiet authority she wields simply by knowing herself and holding her boundaries. Self-control strengthens her mind. She thinks before she reacts. She evaluates before she decides. She distinguishes between what is urgent and what is important. She has learned to identify distractions, emotional triggers, and manipulative tactics. Her mind is a fortress, not because it is rigid, but because it is disciplined. She chooses what to allow into her consciousness and what to reject. She does not ruminate on the opinions or actions of others. She focuses her energy where it matters most: growth, clarity, and purposeful action. Her emotions are also shaped by self-control. She feels deeply. She does not act recklessly on emotion alone. She has learned to recognize the difference between instinct and impulse, between reaction and response. Anger becomes insight rather than destruction. Fear becomes caution rather than paralysis. Desire becomes motivation rather than distraction. In this way, control transforms her emotional landscape from chaos into an internal compass, guiding her toward alignment and integrity. Time itself becomes her ally through self-control. She no longer wastes it reacting to trivialities, responding to every provocation, chasing validation from sources that do not honor her. She prioritizes her energy and attention, understanding that these are finite and sacred. Her focus sharpens because she is selective about what she engages with. She acts decisively, not frantically, and she understands that measured actions yield more profound results than hurried attempts to do everything at once. Self-control also strengthens her resilience. Life is unpredictable, people fail, circumstances shift, and challenges arise unexpectedly. Without control over her mind and emotions, she could be easily unbalanced, lost, or reactive. Self-control allows her to face adversity with grace and composure. She can pause before responding to provocation, think strategically in moments of pressure, and act decisively when opportunity emerges. In this way, she transforms potential setbacks into stepping stones, obstacles into lessons, and challenges into platforms for growth. Her presence becomes a reflection of her inner mastery. People sense it even if they cannot name it. She does not need to assert dominance because her self-possession communicates it effortlessly. In conversations, words are measured and impactful. In decisions, her timing is deliberate. In conflict, her reactions are calculated. Others may act impulsively, angrily, manipulatively, but she remains unshaken. Her calm, intentional, and powerful presence shifts dynamics around her naturally. Self-control also enhances her freedom. True freedom is not the absence of restraint, it is the mastery of oneself. When she is controlled by impulses, fears, external pressures, she is not free. She is at the mercy of circumstance and opinion. Self-control liberates her from these chains. She chooses her path. She decides her responses. She governs her life, her energy, and her decisions. This freedom is not granted by others. It is claimed through discipline and conscious effort. In decision-making, self-control allows her to separate urgency from importance. She does not allow emotional intensity to override long-term goals. She evaluates situations rationally and strategically. She recognizes that short-term discomfort often precedes long-term benefit, and she exercises patience in pursuit of what truly matters. This ability to delay gratification and resist impulsive choices enhances her effectiveness in every aspect of life. Her relationships are richer because of self-control. She does not allow emotional highs and lows to dictate engagement. She listens with focus, communicates with clarity, and acts with integrity. Others may attempt to provoke her, test her patience, or manipulate her feelings, but her controlled responses disarm these tactics. She maintains her standards without alienating others. She fosters genuine connection built on respect and mutual understanding. Self-control is not a restriction, it is a refinement. It transforms potential energy into directed power. It converts impulsive emotion into informed action. It shapes the raw material of human experience into a life of impact, influence, and purpose. By mastering herself, she becomes a force others respect, presence that commands attention without demanding it, and a life that flows with intentionality rather than chaos. Ultimately, self-control makes her calm, intentional, and powerful because it allows her to operate from a place of alignment with her values, clarity in her decisions, mastery over her emotional and mental states. She does not react to the world, she navigates it. She does not chase validation, she holds her own. She does not allow chaos to dictate her energy, she directs it. In mastering herself, she has mastered the very tools that shape influence, impact, enduring power. Through self-control, she has become an embodiment of calm authority, intentional action, and formidable strength. And in this mastery, she walks through life untouchable by manipulation, resilient in adversity, and unwavering in purpose. She is calm, intentional, powerful, and nothing can undermine the sovereignty she has claimed over herself. Boundaries are more than rules or limits. They are declarations of self-respect, affirmations of value, and shields for the soul. They are the invisible fences that separate who she is from what she will not allow, what she will not tolerate, and what she will not compromise. For a woman who has learned to define and maintain her boundaries, life takes on a different dimension. She is no longer a passive participant in the demands and expectations of others. She becomes an active architect of her own experience, ensuring that her peace and identity remain intact. At the heart of strong boundaries is self-awareness. She knows who she is, what she values, what she needs to thrive. She has spent time reflecting on past experiences, relationships, work situations, friendships, family dynamics, to understand where she has given too much, where she has tolerated disrespect, and where she has allowed her identity to be overshadowed. This introspection is not an exercise in blame. It is a reclamation of agency through self-knowledge. She identifies what she will accept and what she will refuse, recognizing that boundaries are not restrictions imposed on others. They are protections for her own integrity. Strong boundaries create an environment where her peace is preserved. Peace is more than quiet. It is a state of mental, emotional, and spiritual equilibrium. Without boundaries, peace is constantly disrupted by the demands, expectations, and manipulations of others. She has learned that saying yes to everything, agreeing to all requests, or excusing all infractions does not make her kind or loving. It makes her available to exploitation. By defining what she will not tolerate, she protects the serenity of her mind, the calm of her heart, and the clarity of her purpose. Boundaries also guard her identity. Identity is the sum of her values, beliefs, priorities, and unique qualities. It is who she is at her core, beneath external influence, approval-seeking, or social expectation. Without strong boundaries, identity becomes porous. She might lose herself in relationships where compromise becomes self-erasure, in workplaces where overextension becomes normalized, or in friendships where exploitation is disguised as loyalty. Boundaries prevent this erosion, ensuring that her essence is preserved even amidst the pressures of life. Setting boundaries requires courage. It is not always welcomed, and it is often challenged. Others may resist, test, or even resent the limits she establishes, especially if they are used to a version of her who said yes too often, compromised too easily, or tolerated too much. She has learned that discomfort from others is not a measure of wrongdoing. It is simply the reaction of people encountering the strength are not accustomed to respecting. By standing firm, she teaches not only herself, but also others that her peace and identity are non-negotiable. Boundaries manifest in many areas of her life, in relationships. They ensure that love is mutual, respectful, and aligned with her values. She does not accept dishonesty, manipulation, or neglect. She does not compromise her emotional needs to accommodate someone else's insecurities. She communicates clearly about what she will and will not tolerate, and she enforces those limits consistently. This clarity protects her from patterns that once drained her energy and left her questioning her worth. In the professional realm, boundaries allow her to work effectively without sacrificing her well-being. She knows when to say no to projects that conflict with her priorities, when to step back from colleagues who overstep, and when to defend her time and energy. She does not allow workplace politics or pressure to dictate her value. By establishing professional boundaries, she creates a space where her productivity, creativity, and integrity can flourish without compromise. Even in friendships and social interactions, boundaries safeguard her peace. She recognizes that not every person deserves unlimited access to her energy, attention, or vulnerability. She discerns between those who uplift and those who drain. She communicates limits clearly, how much time she can give, how much emotional labor she can invest, what behaviors she will not accept. By doing so, she protects herself from manipulation, gossip, and unnecessary stress, ensuring that her social connections remain healthy, reciprocal, and supportive. Boundaries also protect her mental and emotional energy. When she is clear about her limits, she no longer overextends herself to meet the demands of others at the expense of her own needs. She stops apologizing for putting herself first. She no longer feels guilty for saying no to obligations that compromise her well-being. By preserving her energy, she remains focused, balanced, and capable of making decisions that honor her values and priorities. Moreover, strong boundaries cultivate self-respect and confidence. Act of setting and enforcing limits reinforces her understanding that she is worthy of protection and care. It affirms her right to define her own space, make her own choices, and prioritize her own needs. With each boundary she establishes, she strengthens her sense of self, cultivating resilience against external pressures and internal doubts. Self-respect grows not from others' approval, but from her consistent commitment to her own integrity. Boundaries also teach others how to treat her. Respect is not assumed. It is earned through the clarity of her limits and the consistency with which she upholds them. People quickly learn that she does not tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or disregard. They learn that her time, energy, and presence are valuable, and that access to them comes with accountability and reciprocity. In this way, boundaries protect her from exploitation while fostering relationships that are authentic, supportive, and mutually enriching. In addition, boundaries provide a framework for emotional regulation. By defining what she will and will not accept, she prevents unnecessary stress, anxiety, and resentment from accumulating. She does not allow toxic behavior, unkind words, or unhealthy patterns to penetrate her emotional space. When challenges arise, she responds with clarity and discernment rather than reactivity. This ability to regulate emotions strengthens her decision-making, preserves her mental health, and enhances her overall resilience. Strong boundaries are not static, they evolve with the growth. As she becomes more self-aware, her understanding of what she needs to protect deepens. She recognizes when old boundaries are no longer sufficient and adapts accordingly. She continually assesses her relationships, commitments, and environment to ensure they align with her evolving values and purpose. Boundaries are not restrictions. They are living structures that maintain her integrity as she grows, ensuring that peace and identity remain unshakable. Ultimately, strong boundaries empower her to live authentically. She does not compromise her values for convenience, approval, or acceptance. She does not sacrifice her peace to appease others. She does not allow external pressures to define her worth. Instead, she navigates life with confidence, clarity, and intentionality. Boundaries preserve her energy, protect her heart, ensure that her life is guided by her principles rather than external expectation. Strong boundaries protect her peace and identity because they are the armor of self-respect, the compass of discernment, and the shield of integrity. Allow her to exist fully as herself, uncompromised, unwavering, and unafraid. Through them, she maintains calm amidst chaos, clarity amidst confusion, authority over her own life. She is not rigid or unyielding. She is intentional, empowered, and deeply aligned with who she is. In a world that often demands conformity, compromise, and constant availability, strong boundaries are revolutionary. They are the safeguard of her mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. They ensure that her peace is preserved, her identity is protected, and her life unfolds according to her purpose rather than external influence. Through boundaries, she cultivates freedom, dignity, and power, a life lived deliberately, authentically, and unapologetically. There was a time when attachment dictated her choices, when the desire to belong, to be chosen, to feel connected overshadowed her clarity and sense of self. She clung to relationships, situations, and people not because they nurtured her, but because separation felt unbearable. She believed that proximity equaled security, that familiarity equaled worth, that any love was better than none. Yet attachment without alignment is a subtle trap. It is the desire to hold on to what feels safe, comfortable, or familiar, even when it no longer serves growth, purpose, or well-being. Over time, she learned that attachment alone cannot sustain a life of meaning. Alignment, on the other hand, demands a deeper, more courageous form of clarity. It requires honesty with herself about what she truly needs, what she truly values, and what is truly compatible with the life she intends to live. Alignment is not always easy. It often challenges patterns of dependency, habits of compromise, and long-held beliefs about love, loyalty, and security. But alignment is profound because it ensures that her choices, her relationships, commitments, and endeavors resonate with her essence rather than simply satisfying her fears or filling a void. She values alignment because it protects her energy, her peace, and her identity. When she aligns with people, situations, or paths that reflect her principles, she does not expend herself unnecessarily. She is not constantly navigating dissonance, masking discomfort, or negotiating compromise to maintain connection. Alignment allows her to engage fully, love freely, and invest wisely because she is not stretched thin trying to reconcile mismatch. It is the difference between existing in tension and thriving in harmony, between survival and flourishing. Attachment without alignment is rooted in fear, the fear of being alone, the fear of loss, the fear of being unseen or unwanted. She has learned that fear-driven attachment blinds judgment, erodes self-respect, and prolongs suffering. When she clings out of fear, she may remain in situations that drain her, relationships that diminish her, and environments that distort her identity. Over time, this creates a pattern of compromise, resentment, and confusion. She recognizes that being connected is not inherently harmful. Being attached to what is not aligned with her highest self is dangerous. Alignment, in contrast, is rooted in self-respect and clarity of purpose. She has cultivated an awareness of her values, boundaries, and long-term vision. She knows that love, opportunity, or connection must complement her life, not complicate it. Alignment respects her needs, aspirations, and growth. It affirms her worth, her boundaries, and her capacity to thrive. When she chooses alignment over attachment, she invests in relationships and situations that enhance her life rather than diminish it. She chooses partners who honor her, environments that nurture her, and goals that reflect her true calling. She values alignment over attachment because it fosters authenticity. When attachment dominates, she might suppress her feelings, mask her opinions, or compromise her integrity to maintain connection. Alignment allows her to be fully herself, unapologetically, confidently, and intentionally. It ensures that her energy is not wasted on conforming, explaining, or excusing behaviors that conflict with her essence. She no longer sacrifices authenticity for the comfort of familiarity or the illusion of security. Alignment demands truth, and truth requires courage. Choosing alignment over attachment also protects her from manipulation. People who operate from insecurity, control, or selfishness often exploit attachment. They leverage dependency, fear, or emotional longing to dictate terms, influence behavior, or extract compliance. When she values alignment, she becomes discerning. She recognizes red flags, identifies inconsistencies, and trusts her intuition. She does not tolerate coercion disguised as love, nor does she cling to individuals who are misaligned with her integrity. Her loyalty is reserved for what is genuine, mutual, and compatible with her growth. Alignment over attachment reshapes her understanding of love, commitment, and connection. Love is not a matter of holding on at all costs. It is a matter of resonance. Commitment is not blind endurance. It is shared values and mutual respect. Connection is not proximity. It is the quality of engagement, the authenticity of interaction, and the compatibility of vision. When she internalizes this, she can navigate relationships with grace, discernment, and empowerment. She understands that letting go of attachment is not rejection. It is liberation. It is the choice to honor herself above the expectations or demands of others. Her clarity about alignment also influences her decisions beyond relationships. She evaluates career choices, friendships, opportunities, and even daily habits through the lens of alignment. She asks herself, does this serve my growth? Does this reflect my principles? Does this resonate with my purpose? Choices guided by alignment are intentional, sustainable, and empowering. Choices guided by attachment are reactive, emotionally driven, and often misaligned with long-term fulfillment. Through alignment, she exercises sovereignty over her life rather than being swept along by circumstance or external influence. Attachment can often feel like security. It is fragile because it is externally dependent. Alignment is steady because it is internally grounded. She has learned that holding on to what is misaligned brings temporary comfort but long-term compromise. Letting go of attachment may be uncomfortable. It creates space for what is truly right. Alignment cultivates patience, discernment, and resilience, enabling her to wait for connections, opportunities, circumstances that genuinely serve her life. She values alignment over attachment because it honors her self-worth. Attachment often masks fear-driven choices with the language of necessity, making her believe that staying, compromising, or tolerating is the only option. Alignment empowers her to reject that narrative. She understands that her value is inherent, not conditional on proximity, approval, or connection. She chooses relationship environments and goals that affirm her worth rather than diminish it. In doing so, she safeguards her dignity and reinforces her identity. Alignment over attachment also strengthens her emotional intelligence. She learns to differentiate between what feels urgent and what is truly important. She recognizes when emotions are clouding judgment and when clarity demands detachment. She becomes skilled in managing her responses, maintaining perspective, and making deliberate choices. Emotional resilience grows because her decisions are guided by insight rather than impulse, by principle rather than fear, by long-term benefit rather than immediate gratification. Through alignment, she cultivates freedom. The freedom to prioritize herself, her growth, and her purpose. Attachment often chains her to situations that no longer serve her, trapping her in cycles of compromise and dissatisfaction. Alignment liberates her, allowing her to pursue what nourishes her life, expands her vision, and fulfills her potential. She becomes selective not out of arrogance, but out of awareness and self-respect. She waits for resonance, not proximity. She invests in integrity, desperation. Ultimately, she values alignment over attachment because it creates a life of authenticity, clarity, and empowerment. It ensures that her energy, time, and devotion are directed toward what truly matters. It allows her to cultivate relationships, pursue opportunities, make choices that resonate with her principles and purpose. Alignment safeguards her peace, reinforces her identity, and magnifies her influence. She no longer clings to familiarity, convenience, or fear-driven connection. She no longer tolerates compromise that diminishes her essence. She has learned that attachment without alignment is a trap, but alignment without attachment is liberation. By prioritizing alignment, she walks through life with intentionality, discernment, and sovereignty. She chooses what complements her growth, nurtures her spirit, and honors her truth. In valuing alignment over attachment, she has discovered a deeper form of strength, a strength that allows her to navigate love, life, and purpose with grace, courage, and clarity. She is no longer a prisoner of longing. She is a curator of resonance. She no longer sacrifices herself to remain in what is convenient or familiar. She sacrifices only for growth, integrity, and alignment. And in this choice, she becomes unstoppable, unshakable, and deeply empowered. For too long, many have been taught to believe that love, relationships, or connection are synonymous with rescue. That someone else's presence is meant to repair, complete, or save them from the challenges of life. She has lived through this narrative enough to know its limitations. She has seen how dependence masquerades as affection, how neediness can disguise itself as loyalty, and how the pursuit of rescue can erode self-respect. She has learned that true strength, authenticity, and fulfillment are never found in being saved. They are found in being fully capable of standing on her own while inviting someone to walk beside her as an equal. Partnership is a commitment to mutual support, growth, and respect. It is not a dynamic where one person carries the other's burdens or fills voids, but a relationship where both contribute, both respect boundaries, and both thrive in alignment with shared values. She has recognized that rescue, by contrast, is imbalanced. Rescue implies weakness or insufficiency on one side and control or obligation on the other. It often breeds dependency, resentment, or a sense of inadequacy. She refuses to reduce herself to a role of neediness, and she refuses to elevate another to a role of savior. She requires partnership because she values equality. She has cultivated strength, wisdom, and resilience through her own experiences. She has endured challenges that have tested her mind, her heart, and her spirit. She has grown from failures, learned from mistakes, and healed from wounds. In this place of strength, she does not need someone to rescue her. She needs someone to respect her independence while complementing it. She wants a companion who matches her effort, cherishes her integrity, and contributes to her growth without overshadowing her agency. A partnership is a meeting of equals where both individuals recognize and honor the strengths, limitations, and aspirations of the other. She understands that a true partner does not attempt to fix her, nor does she attempt to fix them. Instead, both support each other in their individual and shared journeys. Rescue, in contrast, undermines this balance. It creates obligation, power dynamics, and dependency. When she encounters someone who confuses rescue with love, she recognizes that their intention may be misguided or controlling. She does not compromise her autonomy for the illusion of protection. She requires partnership because she values respect for boundaries. In a partnership, each person has their own space, voice, and sense of self. Decisions are mutual, not dictated by fear, guilt, or obligation. Emotional labor is shared, unilateral. Challenges are navigated together, but not at the expense of individuality. Rescue often ignores boundaries, assuming that the person being saved will relinquish control, give up autonomy, or compromise values. She has learned that this imbalance is unsustainable. She refuses to sacrifice her identity for the comfort of being protected. Partnership demands honesty and transparency. It is rooted in trust, communication, and mutual accountability. She requires someone who can hold space for truth without defensiveness, who can engage in difficult conversations without manipulation or control. Rescue, by contrast, often comes with conditions: gratitude for being saved, compliance with the rescue expectations, or limitations on autonomy. She has experienced enough of these dynamics to know that gratitude should never be coerced. That true love does not demand indebtedness or compromise of self. She values partnership because it fosters growth. Both individuals in a partnership challenge each other in healthy ways, encourage expansion of perspective, and support each other's ambitions. Partnership is dynamic. It requires effort, communication, and intentionality. Rescue is static. It reinforces roles and creates dependency. In seeking a partner rather than a rescuer, she ensures that her relationships are fertile ground for mutual evolution rather than a cycle of need and obligation. She requires partnership because she knows her worth. She has learned to stand independently, to make decisions, to face life's challenges without relying on someone else to save her from the consequences of circumstance. This self-sufficiency is not arrogance. It is confidence born of experience. She will not compromise her dignity or autonomy for the illusion of protection. She understands that a partner enhances life, while a rescuer assumes authority over it. She seeks enhancement, not control. Partnership allows for independence, not dependency. Interdependence is the conscious choice to support each other while maintaining individuality. Dependency is a default, often unconscious, surrender of autonomy for comfort, safety, or validation. She has discovered that interdependence creates a sustainable, balanced relationship where love is chosen and earned, not coerced or mandated. Rescue, by contrast, can create a fragile foundation, dependent on obligation and the perception of weakness. She refuses to engage in relationships built on fragility. She also values partnership because it honors authenticity. In a healthy partnership, she can be fully herself, expressing emotions, desires, ambitions without fear of judgment or the need to perform. Rescue often imposes roles. The person being saved must appear grateful, compliant, less capable than they truly are. She refuses to shrink, mask, or dilute herself for the sake of comfort or approval. Partnership allows her to stand fully in her truth with a companion who accepts and respects that truth. Her experience has taught her patience in choosing a partner. She does not rush connection out of fear of being alone, nor does she settle for someone who confuses control with care. She waits for alignment, shared values, mutual respect, and complementary vision. Partnership requires time, observation, and discernment. Rescue is immediate, reactive, and often tied to temporary need or convenience. She has learned that the right connection is worth waiting for, while the wrong connection, even if it feels safe, undermines her power and integrity. She requires partnership because it creates balance. Both individuals contribute to emotional, practical, and intellectual exchange. There is reciprocity in effort, support, and decision-making. Rescue disrupts balance, placing one person in a position of authority and the other in a position of indebtedness. She recognizes that imbalance breeds resentment, limits growth, erodes respect. Partnership preserves equilibrium, allowing both individuals to flourish without compromising identity identity or autonomy. She values partnership because it respects her boundaries and her capacity for choice. She is not a project, a responsibility, or a problem to be solved. She is a sovereign individual capable of navigating life independently. She seeks companionship, not caretaking. She desires collaboration, not dependency. She invites someone to walk beside her, not to lift her, carry her, or define her trajectory. In partnership, her voice matters equally, boundaries are honored, and her power is never diminished. Ultimately, she requires partnership, not rescue, because she has discovered the strength of her own soul. She has faced challenges, endured trials, and emerged resilient. She understands that a partner complements her life rather than completes it. She chooses connection that enhances, supports, and nurtures mutual growth. She rejects relationships built on obligation, imbalance, or the illusion of salvation. Partnership respects her autonomy, celebrates her integrity, walks beside her with shared purpose. She has learned that love is not rescue, it is mutual alignment. She requires a companion, not a savior. She demands reciprocity, not indebtedness. She seeks equality, not hierarchy. Through this clarity, she protects her peace, her identity, and her sovereignty. In requiring partnership instead of rescue, she ensures that her relationships, her energy, and her life are cultivated with intention, integrity, and strength. She is no longer looking to be saved, she is looking to be matched. She is not seeking dependency, she is seeking synergy. She is not asking for rescue, she is inviting alliance. In this choice lies her power, her freedom, and the foundation for relationships that are authentic, empowering, and enduring. Self-awareness is one of the most formidable strengths a woman can cultivate. It is the deep understanding of who she is, her values, her desires, boundaries, her patterns, and her purpose. A self-aware woman knows her worth and understands her influence. She is familiar with her strengths and honest about her weaknesses. She has confronted her fears, examined her motivations, and reflected on her past experiences to learn, grow, and evolve. In this state of profound awareness, she occupies her life with intentionality, clarity, power, rendering attempts at control or diminishment ineffective. Control relies on ignorance, confusion, or insecurity. It thrives in spaces where a person lacks clarity about themselves or their circumstances. But a self-aware woman cannot be manipulated through doubt, guilt, or deception because she has cultivated insight into her own values and boundaries. She recognizes when someone is attempting to exert influence over her through intimidation, persuasion, or coercion. She is not naive to the strategies that others may employ to dominate, belittle, or dictate her actions. She discerns intention clearly, and she responds with authority rather than reaction. Diminishment often targets self-esteem, confidence, or perceived vulnerability. A self-aware woman's sense of identity is grounded internally. She knows that external opinions do not define her worth. She understands that criticism, rejection, or resistance is often a reflection of others' limitations, insecurities, or misunderstandings, not an indictment of her value. This self-knowledge acts as a shield, protecting her from the corrosive effects of disparagement or judgment. No amount of belittling words or undermining actions can shake the foundation she has built within herself. Self-awareness cultivates emotional intelligence, which further fortifies her against control. She can identify when emotions are being manipulated, when situations are designed to provoke insecurity, and when narratives are being constructed to influence her decisions. She does not react impulsively to fear, guilt, anger, because she understands the origins of these emotions and their triggers. She responds with intentionality, maintaining clarity and composure even in the midst of pressure. This emotional mastery renders manipulation and control tactics largely ineffective. Self-aware woman also knows her boundaries intimately. She understands what she will and will not accept in terms of behavior, respect, and engagement. She communicates these boundaries clearly and enforces them consistently. Anyone who attempts to encroach upon these boundaries quickly learns that she is not pliable or compliant to coercion. Her boundaries are not rigid for the sake of defense alone. They are flexible where alignment exists, yet immovable where her values or integrity are threatened. In this way, self-awareness translates into sovereignty over her own life, Clarity of purpose strengthens her immunity to diminishment. A self-aware woman has spent time understanding what drives her, what she aspires to, and how she wants to navigate life. Decisions are aligned with her goals and principles rather than reactive impulses or external pressures. When others attempt to distract, derail, diminish her, she assesses the relevance of their influence and acts in accordance with her own objectives. She is not easily swayed by opinion, comparison, expectation because she is anchored in a clear vision of her path. Self-awareness also fosters resilience. She has faced adversity, disappointment, challenge, and through reflection and growth, she has developed the ability to endure and adapt without compromising herself. She understands that setbacks do not define her and obstacles do not diminish her. Instead, every challenge becomes an opportunity for insight, growth, and refinement. This resilience ensures that attempts to control or weaken her spirit are met with steady strength and an unshakable sense of self. Her communication is precise and effective. A self-aware woman understands the power of words, tone, and intention. She articulates her needs, asserts her position, and expresses her perspective with confidence and clarity. Miscommunication and misunderstanding, often tools of manipulation, lose their power in her presence because she is deliberate in how she conveys herself and attentive to how others respond. This mastery of self-expression reinforces her autonomy and diminishes attempts to control or mislead her. Furthermore, she is reflective, not reactive. Control often relies on provoking impulsive responses, emotional overreactions, defensiveness, or indecision. But a self-aware woman has cultivated the ability to pause, assess, and respond thoughtfully. She differentiates between what requires engagement and what is inconsequential. She evaluates motives, intentions, and potential outcomes before taking action. This discernment allows her to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics without being dominated by external agendas. Self-awareness empowers her to prioritize alignment over attachment. She does not cling to people's situations, expectations that compromise her integrity or that diminish her essence. She recognizes that loyalty, love, and connection must be reciprocal and respectful. When alignment is absent, she can detach without guilt, resentment, or fear of judgment. This ability to disengage from disempowering circumstances ensures that control cannot be exerted over her through attachment or dependence. Her confidence is grounded in knowledge, not validation. Self-aware woman does not seek constant approval or affirmation from others because she has internalized her worth. This self-assuredness makes her less susceptible to tactics designed to undermine confidence, such as criticism, manipulation, or exclusion. When others attempt to diminish her, she maintains perspective, recognizing that their attempts reflect their limitations, not hers. Her foundation is secure, unshakable by external fluctuation. Self-awareness also enhances her decision-making. She evaluates choices through the lens of experience, values, and long-term vision, and rather than immediate pressure or emotional persuasion. She is strategic in her actions, deliberate in her commitments, discerning in her relationships. This capacity for thoughtful decision-making reduces the likelihood of being controlled by fear, expectation, manipulation, because her choices are informed by insight rather than impulse. Her understanding of her emotions allows her to navigate conflict with grace. She recognizes triggers and patterns, allowing her to respond with intention rather than react with reflexive defensiveness or aggression. She can engage in confrontation without compromising her dignity or authority. This equilibrium ensures that attempts to provoke, intimidate, or control her are met with measured responses that protect both her peace and her integrity. Self-awareness cultivates a strong sense of identity. She understands that her value is inherent and not contingent on the opinions, recognition, or control of others. She does not allow comparison, societal pressure, or criticism to erode her self-concept. This clarity of self ensures that she remains steadfast, authentic, autonomous, even in the face of attempts to manipulate or diminish her. Finally, a self-aware woman nurtures her growth continuously. She reflects on experiences, learns from interactions, and adapts without losing herself. This ongoing process of evolution strengthens her resilience, hones her discernment, and fortifies her against control. She becomes increasingly difficult to sway, diminish, or mislead because each experience adds layers of understanding, insight, and empowerment. In every way, self-awareness functions as both shield and sword. It protects her from external attempts to control her while equipping her to navigate life with precision, clarity, and strength. Self-aware woman understands herself, knows her boundaries, recognizes her value, and operates with purpose. She is calm under pressure, discerning in relationships, intentional in choices, and resilient in adversity. Self-aware woman cannot be controlled or diminished because she occupies her life with sovereignty, integrity, and intentionality. She has anchored herself in knowledge, guided by reflection, and fortified by experience. She does not yield to manipulation, fear, or coercion because she knows who she is and what she will and will not tolerate. She moves through the world with clarity, confidence, and quiet authority, presence that commands respect and protects her essence. Her self-awareness ensures that external attempts to dominate, undermine, or belittle her are powerless. She stands in her truth, guided by insight, fortified by experience, unwavering in the knowledge that her worth and strength are intrinsic, not granted by anyone else. She cannot be diminished because she knows herself completely. She cannot be controlled because she has claimed authority over her mind, her heart, and her life. In this awareness lies her ultimate power, calm clarity, and unshakable sovereignty. She is a woman who has mastered herself, who navigates life intentionally, and who engages with the world from a place of profound inner authority. A self-aware woman is untouchable by manipulation, impervious to diminishment, unstoppable in her pursuit of alignment, purpose, and integrity.